we do.
Okay. Well, before we turn things over to our acting chair this evening, we have Joanne Jodke here, the Manager of Business Development and Partnerships for Conservation Ontario. She's going to be our acting chair for the purposes of election of officers. However, we do have an item to be read according to our bylaws by our Secretary Treasurer, and I'd like to turn that over to Neil at this point to read that aloud. Neil?
Thank you. February 3, 2022, absence from HCA Board Meeting. To HCA Board members, we regret to advise that the three of us have chosen to absent ourselves tonight from this HCA Board Meeting, which includes the election of the 2022-23 HCA table officers. To date, we and you have received over 200 emails from conservation and environmental allies, donors including major donors, who have expressed their lack of confidence in the current chair and his continuance in that capacity. Collectively, we polled board members and they have indicated their desire to acclaim the current chair. While we respect their position, we do not wish to be complicit in the acclamation of a chair with whom our conservation allies, foundation donors, and several past HCA board and foundation chairs have lost confidence. For that reason, we have personally decided to not participate in this evening's action. With our greatest respect, Brad Clark, Susan Fielding, Russ Powers.
Thank you, Neil. I now would like to turn things over to our acting chair, Joanne Jodke, to outline our election procedures from our administrative bylaws and provide her opening remarks. Joanne.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Good evening, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here to conduct and chair your election. I welcome I'm really pleased to be here to also say congratulations on the good work that the Conservation Authority staff and you all have done in the past year. And I'll leave it at that and now read the procedures for the election. So basically, the way it works is the nominations will only require a mover. Nominations will be called 3 times for each office. Closing of nominations will require a mover and a seconder. Each nominee will be asked if they are willing to serve. If more than one person is nominated and willing to serve, an election will take place and voting shall be by secret ballot by anonymous electronic poll. Each nominee will be allowed to speak in support of his or her nomination with a time limit of 5 minutes. A vote will be held by the electronic polling feature within the WebEx video conferencing application, and no member may vote by proxy. Should there be any technological issues with the electronic polling feature in WebEx, the scrutineer will email an anonymous Google form survey to the directors to be completed in real time. Just a reminder that at any time during this meeting, please text or email Jamie Tellier if you are having any technical difficulty. I'd just like to ask right now, is anyone having any technical difficulty? Looks like everyone's doing okay. And are there any questions about the procedures? Okay. Now that's seeing none or hearing none, I now declare all offices vacant. So to begin, a motion is now required to appoint a scrutineer in the event of an election. And the motion is as follows: that if more than one person is nominated, Jamie Tellier be appointed scrutineer, and further that all electronic polling results will be closed and not saved after each polling is concluded. May I have a mover and a seconder for this motion? So Maria Popolovich and Dan Bowman. All in favor? Okay, that carried. Thank you. We'll now move on to the election of the chair. I call for nominations for the 2022 chair of the Hamilton Conservation Authority. Mr. Bowman, Dan?
I nominate Lloyd Ferguson.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations for chair for the Hamilton Conservation Authority? And for the third time, are there any nominations for the chair of Hamilton Conservation Authority? Okay. Having no further nomination, the following resolution is required for approval that the nominations for 2022 chair of HCA be closed. May I have a mover and seconder for that? Sorry, I see speaker.
Jim Simba.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Simba. And Grace Maria? Second, all in favor? Here. So now that I'm asking Mr. Ferguson, would you stand for this nomination?
I would be very privileged to do that, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. And given that there's no election, I now declare the acclamation of Mr. Ferguson as chair of the Hamilton Conservation Authority for the Board of Directors for 2022. May I have a mover and seconder? Esther and sorry, speaker. I forgot your name. My apologies.
Jim Simba.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. That carries. Congratulations, Mr. Chair. We're now going to move on to the election of the vice chair. So I'd like to call for a nomination for the 2022. I'm seeing a hand there. Tom Jackson.
I didn't let you finish your sentence, Acting Chair.
it's
My
okay.
apologies.
Thank you very much. I'll finish it. I'll start over. I now call for nominations for the 2022 vice chair for Hamilton Conservation Authority.
Acting Chair Rosatki, I'd be honored to nominate Santina Moccio for Vice Chair, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any second? I'm calling again for nomination vice chair. And for the third time? Thank you. So I'll close the nominations for chair, vice chair. Sorry, I'm using the script here. Having no further nominations, that nominations for 2022 vice chair of the Hamilton Conservation Authority be closed. I need a mover and a seconder. Esther and Dan. Thank you. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Would you like to accept the nomination?
I'd be honored to. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, I now declare the acclamation of the office by the following motion that Santina, sorry, last name,
Moccio.
thank you, be confirmed as vice chair of Hamilton Conservation Authority Board of Directors for 2022. May I have a mover and a seconder for this motion? Mr. Jackson and Maria, thank you. All in favor? Great. That carries. Thank you. So congratulations on your appointment as vice chair for 2022.
Thank you.
Now I'm going to move to chair of the Conservation Authority Advisory Board or Conservation Advisory Board. And I'm now going to call for nominations for that. For Maria?
For you, Madam Chair, I'd like to nominate Dan Bowman for Chair of the Conservation Advisory Board.
Thank you. And do we have a second nomination? And a third? Okay. I'd like to close the nomination for the Chair of the Conservation Advisory Board. May I have a mover and a seconder for that? Cynthia? And Mr. Ferguson?
That's correct. I'd be happy to second it.
Okay, thank you. I thought I saw your hand go up. Thank you. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Would you like to accept that nomination, Mr. Bowman?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I'd like to now declare the acclamation of the office by the following motion. That is, Mr. Dan Bowman be confirmed as chair of the Conservation Advisory Board for 2022. May I have a mover and a seconder? Oh, sorry, Santina and Maria. Thank you very much. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you and congratulations, Mr. Bowman. We're now going to move on to the board representatives to the Budget and Administration Committee. So the way that works is that we're asking, first of all, I have to say that the committee consists of 5 board of director members, with the chair and vice chair of the board being designated members, and up to 3 additional directors may join as sitting members. The vice chair of the board of directors is the designated chair of the Budget and Audit Committee. I would now ask you to please raise your hand and state your name if you're interested in sitting on the Budget and Administration Committee. Sorry, I said Budget and Audit before, it's Budget and Administration. So who is interested in that? We can have 3. So Jim?
Jim Simba.
I got it. Jim Zimba.
Thank you.
Dan Bowman. And Maria Topolovich. So I have to now ask if here you're all agreeing to sit. So I now have a resolution. Sorry, that Mr. Simba, Mr. Bowman, and Ms. Topolovich be confirmed as members of the Budget and Administration Committee for 2022. May I have a mover and a seconder? Cynthia and Santina. Thank you. All those in favor? I believe that carries. Thank you. Congratulations. And I'm now going to move on to appointing members of the Conservation Authority Board, or Conservation Advisory Board. So up to 2 directors may join the chair as sitting member of the tab. I'd like you to please raise your hand if you are interested in sitting on the tab. We have Cynthia and anyone second? I only see 1. So with that, I will now basically have made the motion that Cynthia, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your last name. Jansen. Thank you. Cynthia Jansen be confirmed as a member of the Conservation Advisory Board for 2022. May I have a mover and a seconder for that? Mr. Jackson and Mr. Simba. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. So I believe that is the end of my duties for this evening. I really appreciate being here. Congratulations once again to all the new representatives, and I wish you well in the coming year, and thanks for the opportunity to be here this evening. And I'll carry that, I guess I put it over now to the new chair.
I think you turn it over to the new chair, do you not, Madam Chair?
Yep, I did say that. Maybe you didn't hear me.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Well, thank you very much for joining us tonight and
Thank you.
taking on this big responsibility of selecting our executive for 2022. And we do
My pleasure.
we really appreciate you doing that for us. And it's an independent person and it works out very well. So thank you. So
welcome.
members, I'll just move on now to the agenda. But before I go on to the regular agenda, I just have some brief comments to make to the board and to the public. First of all, I want to thank the board for their acclamation tonight. I take this job very seriously, and I look forward to working with staff and most important with this board during this next term. And before I would also like to address issues and opinion pieces that we've seen in the Hamilton Spectator and letters to the board. And reading through those letters, I know they are all passionate about the environment and natural areas. So I would like to address at this time just some of their concerns. A number of them have stated that we are bulldozing over or paving wetlands. And unfortunately, I never saw one example because I'm not aware of one. I don't know how that message got out there, but it's too bad it did. And if someone has an example, I would love to hear from you to find out what it is. In fact, we are building new wetlands at our Salt Fleet site right now. One is under construction and more are planned. There was an allegation by a columnist that we are shrinking our natural areas. Well, in fact, we added 177 acres of natural land in 2021 to our current 11,000 acre ownership. There was a lot of discussion in those correspondence and in the opinion pieces about our offsetting policy. And just for everyone's benefit, and 3 conservation authorities already have one. The province has developed or has allowed developers to appeal conservation authority decisions to the Ontario Land Tribunal. It's a new adjudication group that's been set up by the province of Ontario, formerly the OMB, and LPAT, Local Property Appeals Tribunal. So they're on their 3rd name right now. So I challenge our staff as your board chair, should we control our own destiny with our own offsetting policy, or let the Ontario Land Tribunal do it? So that was my challenge. And we went through a draft policy on offsetting, put it out for public consultation, and then got a final report back from our staff to the board. And at the end, staff felt the OLT, the Ontario Land Tribunal, should be the one to make these kind of decisions. So we're a group that's passionate about our wetlands and passionate about conservation, so we decided not to touch that. In fact, the board voted unanimously to accept their recommendation, being the staff recommendation, not to have an offsetting policy. And of course, being unanimous, it included my support. Now, just to bring everybody up to speed, the developers at 140 Garner Road has now appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal our decision, and that should be heard sometime in 2022. The letters also suggested I support job and tax revenue over conservation. And I'll just open up by saying I do not apologize for saying we need tax relief and jobs in Hamilton. Hamilton's largest tax source right now is on residential properties. Right now, approximately 85% of our tax revenue comes from residential and 15% from industrial and commercial. Finance staff consistently letting us know, by finance staff, I mean city finance staff, are consistently telling us we need more industrial taxes are needed. And the reason for that is to provide relief to the residential taxpayer. And the city is going in that direction with recent investments in the Red Hill Industrial Park, the Ancaster Industrial Park with the new Cormorant Road now finished. And now what's coming on stream is the airport and Plymouth Growth District, where smoke services are now at the site. Also, tens of thousands of people in Hamilton drive or take a train to Toronto every day. They do that to go to work. Those jobs should be in Hamilton. But let me make it very clear. I have not and will not compromise conservation as chair of the HCA. It is our job to protect our watershed. We had some big challenges in the past couple of years. Everybody's aware of COVID and how we had to go through a shutdown and make decisions on when to reopen, but we got through it for the most part. We may have a ways to go, but our facilities, other than the Wild Waterworks, are now open. We were scared to death of financial challenges because of our parks being closed, and but we got through that. In fact, we've had such a successful financial year. Last year, we got a $2 million surplus, meaning at the end of 2020. And I'm eagerly waiting Neil to tell us that maybe we were going to be somewhere around the same in 2020-21. So we defeated that task, and I'm very proud of that, and the board should be very proud of that. The province imposed changes to the Conservation Authority Act on us, which includes provisions for developers to appeal decisions of conservation authorities to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Citizen appointees, who are a very valuable part of our board, are under review. And terms for chair and vice chairs, just to name a few of the things we're facing. We have negotiated resolution to some, but not all. This last 2 years is probably one of the more turbulent times in the history of the HCA. I want to go just review with some good things that have happened last year because we've heard a lot of negative, and I think the public needs to know some of the good things. I pointed most of them out in my op-ed to the Hamilton Spectator last week. But record attendance, doubled our membership in the last 2 years. As I said earlier, 177 acres of natural lands purchased and protected forever. We are not shrinking natural lands, as one columnist stated. We successfully made significant changes in what was proposed in Bill 229. We had a great discussion on the offsetting policy, but in the end supported the staff recommendation not to have one. Of course, there's risk associated with that because the developers can now appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal. And tonight, when Dan presents his report, we will hopefully approve the 50-point master plan. We constructed more cottages at Valens Lake. And to quote Neil, our CFO, Tuesday is the new Saturday. We're sold out every night of the week now. It's been that popular. The reservation system at Spencer Valley, which resulted in less crowding at Webster's Falls, Tews Falls, and Dundas Peak, and also no congestion on the roads in the Greensville area. And the reservations were sold out. So we've done a lot of good things, and I'd like to congratulate the board and mostly our staff, well, both, for the great year we had in 2021. It's something we should be celebrating. I can't stress enough, and I said this probably a lot already, and the board's probably tired of it, but I suspect there's some people listening in tonight. We are so lucky to have such an incredible staff at the Conservation Authority. I have publicly stated before, one of the reasons I originally put my name forward to be chair of the board is because of the caliber of our staff. I spent most of my professional life judging people, and I can tell you, I have not met a Conservation Authority staff, whether it's the entry gate clerk, right up to our CAO. Everyone, you could just see it in their eyes. They love coming to work every day. It shows in our results. And I want to publicly, again, thank our staff for the great job that they're doing on this very, very successful organization. So I thank you for your attention. I'm finished my comments, and I'd like to move back to the regular meeting and call it to order. So is there any declarations of interest? Seeing none, I'm going to move on to the approval of the agenda. Madam CAO, is there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, through the chair, we do have an additional 52 items of correspondence to add under item 7.6. And we've also had a request to add item of new business under section 13 for 13.1.
It's under 13.1, then under new business?
Yes.
You're not doing it under correspondence? Okay. Okay, then we'll, can I have a motion then to approve the agenda as amended? Moved by Councillor Jackson, seconded by Cynthia. Discussion on it? Seeing none, is there anybody opposed? Seeing none, we're going to move on now to, there's no delegations tonight. And so consent items for applications. So 7.1 is applications, development, interference with wetlands, alterations to shorelines and water courses. And just stop me if anybody has any questions on any of these consent items when I get to them. Approval of the board directors minutes of December the 2nd. A letter from the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks to Township of Bushlands, respecting exception to subsection 14.1-1 of the Conservation Authorities Act dated January the 13th, 2022. 7.4 is 171 items of correspondence respecting the 2022 election of officers, labeled as A to FO, and I believe there was an amendment adding some additional letters at the changes to the agenda. So that's the end of the consent items. If nobody has any questions, could I have a motion then to receive these items in the consent agenda? Moved by Santina, seconded by Esther. Is anybody opposed? Seeing none, we're going to move on to the foundation briefing and ask, is Grace going to do it or is Jennifer going to do it today? I see Jennifer here. Jennifer, are you going to do this today or do we turn it over to Grace?
I'm going to do this today, but then Grace will speak again later about.
Okay, you'll do the foundation
different
briefing and then Grace will do the naming of the Salt Lake Conservation Area then.
Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
well, go ahead, Jennifer. The floor is yours.
Thank you, through you. So here's our report for December and January. So we received a total of $61,780, which went to 28,906 to the area of greatest need fund, 22,055 for Westfield Heritage Village, 2,500 for tribute benches, 2,100 for trail development, about 2,000 for the planting fund, 1,960 for the land securement fund, and the remaining 2,234 includes donations to stewardship and the Dundas Valley Conservation Area. We are finalizing our strategic priorities for 2022 with anticipated growth in donations. Our fundraising focuses for next year include continuing to fully fund the environmental education program, funding future work at Salt Lake Conservation Area, and starting to build our education endowment to a level where it will generate sufficient income to fully fund the annual operating needs of the education program. We are also excited to report that the Heritage Green Community Trust has confirmed a $2 million contribution through the foundation directed to the construction of the first salt fleet wetland. We are looking forward to finalizing the terms of the donation with the trustees. And as I mentioned, Grace will be speaking a little more about that in the report that follows my update. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Any questions to Jennifer? Seeing none, then we're going to move on to the naming of the naming approval of the Salt Lake Conservation Area. Grace?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Jennifer mentioned, we're very excited with that announcement. I'm sure some of you saw it in the media as well previously. As the report before you indicates, we've had several discussions with Heritage Green from the presentation that myself, Lisa, and Scott attended, and then subsequent conversations with both the trustees and staff at Heritage Green, where the possibility of having the recognition of a gift of that magnitude, what we could do in the naming of something was discussed. So before you is a proposal or a recommendation from the foundation board that the main trail at Salt Fleet Conservation Area, once the wetland is done and the trail is in place, would be named the Heritage Green Community Trust Trail in recognition of that magnificent gift that they've confirmed. As most of you know, they also contributed $2 million to purchase some of that land a few years ago. So our current naming policies allow for naming of items with the approval of the HCA board for significant gifts, and I would certainly say that this is one of the most significant gifts. Certainly, since I've been with the foundation, it's the most significant gift we've received. And I'm happy to answer any questions and leave the motion before you.
Yeah, the motion is before the board. So any questions or comments of Grace about the naming of this facility? Seeing none, could I have a motion then to approve the recommendation of the foundation? Moved by Jim, seconded by somebody want a second? I would need Maria. Thank you. And so discussion on the motion. Seeing none, is anybody opposed? And I declare it to be carried unanimously. Thanks very much for that, Grace. It's nice to see the donor recognized the way they should be.
Thank you.
There is no member briefing, no business arising from the minutes. So let's go on to reports from the Budget Administration Committee and Conservation Advisory Board. And I'll turn it over to Dan Bowman.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. The Conservation Advisory Board met on December 9th, and out of that meeting, we have two recommendations or resolutions that are here before us this evening. We had a wonderful meeting that night, lots of great discussion, and I want to thank staff for all of their time there. Our first resolution, CA 2126 for the 50 Point Conservation Area Master Plan, is in your package under item 11.1.1. Kathy Smith presented the 50 Point Master Plan to CAB at the December meeting. She is here again this evening to present and speak to the board. Before I turn it over to Kathy, I do want to recognize that she did an excellent job with this plan, and we had extensive discussion at CAB, and our key highlights were also captured in the articles. 50 Point has become an urban conservation area and has experienced significant rise in use and attendance. Strategies for improving visitor, site, and operational management to accommodate increasingly high visitation and anticipated growth in the area were discussed, as well as significant natural features of the conservation area. This really demonstrates the importance of our master plan in providing roadmaps for the future, and there were over 400 public comments providing input to the plan, with common themes being pedestrian access, as well as flagging safety concerns related to the lack of sidewalks and traffic issues for pedestrians. As a result, recommendations to the municipality regarding the area surrounding HCA's property and upgrading Baseline Road were added to the plan, as well as exploring a secondary entrance off of Kelson Road seasonally in the Grimsby side of the park. I would be pleased to move the recommendation following Kathy's presentation if there are any questions.
Thank you very much, Dan. Kathy, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for those kind words. It's a pleasure to be here tonight to present this to you. Before we get into the presentation, which Jamie's going to help load, I do want to introduce Madeline Armstrong to the board. Tonight, Maddie is our landscape designer and has stepped up into a project lead role for our master plans. And I just wanted you to meet Maddie and give Maddie a chance to say hello to you.
Welcome, Maddie.
Hi, everyone. I'm happy to be here. Thank you very much for having me. I look forward to seeing how the rest of the meeting goes and hearing Kathy present the master plan.
Okay.
Great,
Back
thanks.
to you, Kathy.
All right. Okay, Jamie's got the presentation up here, so we'll go to the first slide. So this is a bit of a repeat of last month's presentation, Dan, so my apologies, but I thought it was good to highlight again what we talked about last month and for the board to see it as well. So we'll quickly go through, this is just a quick highlight of the document that you have. We'll talk a little bit about the community engagement that we conducted for the plan. I'll walk you through some of the key highlights in this master plan, and then we'll have some time to answer any questions before it goes for your approval. So next. So community engagement for the plan really was in 2021. The intent was to start it in 2020, but the pandemic delayed rollout of this. We actually ended up going to an online engagement through our website. So that began in June, and while we were also reaching out to our staff and stakeholders. So over from June to mid-August, plans were out on our website, surveys were out for the public to comment, and we came to CAB in December, and now we're with you for your final approval and endorsement. Next. Our community engagement took a number of channels to reach out to as many people as possible. We had an engagement site on the website for the surveys. We also held public information tables in the conservation area to talk to our visitors on site. Staff hosted delegation tours out at the property and at Wood End, and we circulated directly copies of the draft plan to people who signed up to receive it on the engagement site and our stakeholder list. Next. So this was the first time that we used our website for public surveys, and it worked quite well, we thought. As you can see, these were the number of surveys that were submitted by the public. We have all of the comments that on those surveys in detail in our files for reference over the next 10 years of this plan. And the master plan itself provided some key highlights in the appendix of those surveys. Next. Here we are at 50 Point this summer. This is what our public information table looked like. We were set up there, Maddie's there, talking to one of the visitors. We were just there to reach out to people if they were interested. But on the right, we had our park staff put a number of flyers out in the park and the community. And the QR code on those flyers, people could scan that and it would take them right to the survey. So they could do it on their mobile devices. Next. Our consultation with the stakeholders included, because 50 Point is in the town of Grimsby and Niagara region as well, we reached out to town of Grimsby representatives. We also reached out to representatives from Niagara region and had meetings on site with people from these agencies and our stakeholders. Next. And here are just a sampling of the wide range of circulation we did on this plan to receive as much input as possible from all the different stakeholders and people interested in 50 Point in the community. And this really did help us look at all the recommendations that we've put forward in this plan for you. Next. Now, I just want to walk through a few of the key highlights of this big document, just to highlight some of the main items that we're trying to stress in this plan in terms of an overall site concept and philosophy for the next 10 years. And the first one is to really focus on conserving and protecting the natural areas on the property that are there, and work with those natural areas to make improvements to them over time. Secondly, we know we're going to be serving a larger number of visitors entering 50 Point from the growing surrounding community. The plan is geared to address this. We also know that we need to continue to make improvements to the marina to serve boaters in this area and sustain the large revenue that the marina brings in for HCA. And we also need to anticipate the needs of campers and our day use visitors in our capital development plan, which we've detailed in the appendix of the document. Next. So from that overall philosophy, we've set out 3 high-level goals in this plan. The first, addressing the natural areas on the property. As you can see in the plan, in the mapping that we've got in the plan and the reports, we've set out a number of conservation area zones to guide the activities on the property in those zones, as well as inventoried the natural areas and provided a number of detailed management recommendations for their continued care and management. We've also, for the first time in our master plans in recent history, we're setting conservation targets for the nature reserve zones, and we're focusing on habitat for migratory birds. Because 50 Point, of course, is an important staging area for our birds, our migratory birds. And our ecology staff and all of our staff have had input into the natural areas recommendations in this plan, as well as all of our consultation. The second high-level goal is our visitors, to address providing access to all of our visitors into 50 Point. And as Dan mentioned, we did address in the plan, we made a number of recommendations for consideration by our municipal partners of things we noticed occurring off of our property, people trying to get to 50 Point from the surrounding community, lack of sidewalks, bike lanes, and access out in the community. We've made a number of comments there for consideration, and we want to work together with our partners and neighbors to improve this moving forward, including improving pedestrian access points and improving vehicle entrance points as much as we can at Baseline Road, and also look at Kelson Road as a secondary entrance. And as well, diverting our staff and service vehicles to a separate entrance from the main park entrance to help relieve some of that traffic congestion. Next. And our third high-level goal is a long-term, over the next 10 years, to really improve on what we have at 50 Point to sustain everything going on out there, knowing that a larger number of people will be using the facilities, and that first of all, we need to replace some significant features in the marina that are showing their age. And also the roadway in the park is showing wear and tear from all of the activities happening on site. We also want to address adding some new park features at the entrances to support visitor access. And we also want to explore the area north of the campground a bit further for both either the campground development or passive recreation. And thirdly, to enhance the existing features in the park, addressing both the natural areas and the capital improvement program that will sustain the operation. Next. Quickly go through a few of the key project highlights that you'll see in the plan that people may find of interest. With the marina, we know we will need to do some work on the pilings surrounding the basin there to extend the height of them and put in new pilings, this to address the high lake levels that we're seeing. We also need to look at the docks and boardwalks. The entire infrastructure there is aging and will need to be replaced. We also know that we need to address this at the fishing pond with better access to the pond itself with accessible platforms and docks. And in order to serve our boaters better in the park, we have to look at improved boat storage areas for that growing market. Next. With the campground, three key things. As I mentioned, we will investigate the area north of the campground to see if expansion there is possible. While that is being investigated, we know that we can do some changes, design changes with the existing campground to improve the sites that we have there, mainly to accommodate the larger trailers and recreational vehicles that we're seeing coming into the park. We also want to add a new park pavilion for our campground patrons to help them visit off of the campsites. Next. And of course, day use is a big topic at 50 Point. The beach is, as you know, very popular. We want to improve access points to the day use areas, improving the parking and the trails from the parking areas to the beach and the day use areas. We heard loud and clear in our surveys to improve amenities such as the beach washrooms, and we also see a need for adding a public washroom near the fishing pond, as well as improving access in that area. And with all of this, we know that we will need to restrict access in some areas for the natural area restoration. Next. And so just before concluding here, the goal of this plan is primarily to set out a high-level vision to help guide all of us in planning, developing, and managing 50 Point for the next 10 years. And I just wanted to close with this excerpt from the plan that as the surrounding areas continue to develop and grow, 50 Point will remain a green oasis of nature and recreational open space. It is the overall intent of HCA to wisely manage the conservation area and undertake supplementary management and operating plans and initiatives to support the goals and objectives of this master plan within the next 10 years. Next. And so we're at the stage now of taking your questions and hopefully then moving on to seeing you approve this plan and we can start putting it into motion. Thank you.
Very much, Kathy, for that that overview. I'm telling you, looking at that shot of the harbor and the beach made me smile when I looked out the window and see a cold February day out here. But you did an amazing job. Is there any accolades you want to hand out to other staff besides Maddie? Because there's a lot of work in that document and it's very thorough.
We have an excellent staff here that have provided input from our ecology staff. I want to shout out to the park staff at 50 Point, who were incredible in reaching out to our stakeholders and setting up meetings with people. And all of the workshops that we did with staff at 50 Point, people were very passionate and very open about all the things we've had to deal with during COVID, during the writing of this plan. And we really got into a lot of detail and understanding of where we need to go in the next 10 years. And I just have to shout out to everybody that it truly was a team effort. And the strength of the staff here makes these plans what they are. I help facilitate and lead them, and Maddie is joining me in that. But it really is everybody pulling together to bring these plans to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. I wish we were live because I could walk down and give you a high five because great job. Well done.
Thank
And I also want to recognize our chairman of the Conservation Advisory Committee, Dan Bowman. He shepherded this through his committee, and he's the one that's moving the motion to approve it here tonight. And I learned some things by reading it. For one thing, I didn't realize the fishing pond was dug when they were building the Queenie. And that was kind of an interesting history of the conservation area. But we're going to have to find you some capital dollars also for particularly around the expensive stuff in that in the marina. So I'd like to open it up now to any member of the board that would like to ask Kathy or Dan or Lisa or anybody else any questions about the master plan before I turn it back to Dan to make the motion. Okay, I don't see any hands waving, so I'm going to turn it back to you now, Dan, to make the motion to approve it.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. And Kathy, just before I do that, congratulations. I've worked with many master plans and business plans in my career. This is an amazing one. I said it at the cab. It's a great mix of history, understanding where we came from, but more importantly, it's the roadmap to our future and the steps that are necessary to get us there. So kudos to you and all of your team in making that so. So thank you. So I'm honored to present this recommendation on your behalf, actually. So that the Conservation Area Advisory Board recommend to the Board of Directors that this report and accompanying master plan of November 2021 be received and information for project background and general understanding, and further that the 50 Point Conservation Area Master Plan 2021 be approved.
Good, I need a seconder to that. Seconded by Cynthia. A discussion on the motion. Okay, I'll call for the vote then. Is anybody opposed? Well, congratulations, Kathy. It just carried unanimously at the board. So now you can go ahead and start to implement it now. So,
Thank you. Thank you so much.
you're welcome. So Dan, I think you have the Spencer Gorge Conservation Area Reservation System also.
Yes, I do. And for members, this is item 11.1.2 in your package. So at our meeting, Gord Costi presented an excellent summary of the report at our December meeting, and he is here this evening to address any questions and to provide any further comments. Gord noted to CAB that in 2021, visitation was lighter at Spencer Gorge than in 2020. However, the weather was not as good, and the easing of pandemic restrictions did open up more recreational options to people to once again experience. While numbers were down, the reservation system, coupled with the support from city parking and bylaw, were effective in keeping traffic congestion to a minimum, and the reservation system was provided a vastly improved visitor experience. Given that the 2021 experience demonstrated that the HCA parking lots can handle the weekday capacity, the recommendation moving forward in 2022 is that no reservation will be required during weekdays until the fall color season, which allows for regular day use and membership pass access without having to make a reservation. This operating approach addresses feedback from both the community and pass holders to provide access to when there is capacity. Should attendance and visitor volumes increase beyond the parking lot capacity, staff can quickly pivot and update the reservation system as needed. The reservation system has been a great success story for the HCA, and I would be pleased to move the recommendation that's before you. And if you wish, I can move it. It's a lengthy recommendation, I think.
Well, let me just call for a seconder, then I'll have you read it out, Dan. That's
Sure.
okay?
Yep.
Okay, is there a seconder to Dan's motion? Second by Maria. Okay, Dan, you can go ahead and read the motion out now.
Okay. That the Conservation Area Advisory Board recommends to the Board of Directors that whereas the pilot of 2020 and 21 reservation system for the Dundas Peak, Twos Falls, and Webster's Falls was highly successful at improving the conservation area experiences by controlling and regulating the number of visitors and for reducing vehicular traffic and congestion within the nearby community. Whereas staff were directed to evaluate the effectiveness of this pilot reservation system and report back to the operations in 2021. Whereas staff were directed to monitor and evaluate the reservation system as a potential and continuous part of the operations in addressing parking and visitor management strategies for the area. Therefore, be it resolved that the reservation system be integrated as part of the ongoing operations of Spencer Gorge area based on the following parameters. That the future reservation periods for Spencer Gorge Conservation Area continue to reflect the dates of May to November with specific start and end dates to be determined by staff, and further, that the reservation period operates based on weekends and public holiday reservation requirements in 2022 until mid-September, when a 7-day-a-week reservation will be required for fall colors, while still providing the ability of staff to undertake real-time adjustments for reservation systems required to add additional reservation days if required.
Okay, so the motion is before you. Is there questions or comments on it? Seeing none, put it to the vote. Anybody opposed? And let the record show that carried unanimously. Great job tonight, Dan. You had a big agenda there and a lot of big issues. 50-point master plan is huge.
Good work by staff, though. Made it very easy. Thank you.
Yes, it did. Yeah, staff always do an amazing job. So let's move on now to the Budget Administration Committee. And we have the newly appointed chair. I guess that's Santina. Welcome. So I'll let you present the Budget Administration Committee report.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Board members, this is to do with the draft inventory of programs and services, and it's on page 363 of your package, and it's item number 11.2.1. So at the Budget Admin Committee meeting that we recently had, staff brought forward a report with the draft inventory of programs and services identified as part 2 of the transition period to stay within compliance of the MECP regulations. The inventory represents staff's understanding of the requirements laid out by the MECP and how we could best fit our work plans and budget into this template, which crosses multiple divisions within our organization and doesn't match or align on how we build or track our budget. This has taken a tremendous amount of time and staff resources to undertake. This inventory, Neil walked the B&A committee members through a complex spreadsheet that was created to arrive at the costing. The inventory therefore represents a status quo of the approved 2022 budget. And thanks very much to Neil and to Scott. This was a huge, huge undertaking, and they're here to answer any questions that you might have. And Mr. Chairman, do you want me to read out the motion now or later?
Well, let me just open up for questions or comments first from, I think Neil's here to answer them, and I'll just give a brief comment. We did have this presentation at the B&A committee, and when I got up to line 1,900, I got a headache. And this was one of the things that was imposed on us by the Bill 229, which is the amendments to the Conservation Authority Act. So it's been a huge amount of work for Neil and the rest of the staff to merge all our financial information over to this. I'm not sure who's really going to take a lot of use of it, but we're legislatively required to do it. And I want to thank our staff and particularly Neil for putting this together on time. And now we can submit it. So questions or comments on it? No? Okay, put the motion then, Santina.
That the Board of Directors approve the attached HCA draft inventory of programs and services, subject to and including any further revisions as noted during the January 20th, 22 meeting.
Is there a seconder to that? Cynthia? Discussion on the motion. Looks like they're going to get off easy here, Neil, for such a big document. But just call it, is anybody opposed to the motion? I declare that carried unanimously. So let's move on to 12.1, which is the meeting schedule. They're before you. Any questions or comments on it? So Lisa, do you need a motion on this or just is here for information?
This just needs to be received for information.
Okay, a motion to receive it then. Moved by Dan, seconded by Jim. Discussion? Anybody opposed? And that carries unanimously. 12.2 is appointments of voting representatives to the Conservation Ontario. And so there's 3 recommendations, or there's 4 candidates. If I can't go, Santina will go. If Santina can't go, Lisa will go. And if Lisa can't go, then Scott will go. And so we need a motion then to approve these as the representatives on the Conservation Ontario board. Moved by Esther Pauls, seconded by Cynthia. Discussion on it? Seeing none, all in favor? Oh, no, sorry. Anybody opposed? That's the easy way of doing it. We're here on WebEx. That carries unanimously. Appointment of auditors. And so Lisa, are you going to present this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have a recommendation before you. Annually, we report, we do designate our auditors. And the recommendation is that we appoint Grant Thornton for our auditors. We are currently in the middle of a new agreement with them, so they will be appointed for the next few years. We've been very happy and satisfied with their services, and you will again see them shortly in a few months' time when they bring them before you to go over our 2021 financial statements.
Okay, so the recommendation is that we keep going with Grant Thornton. Kind of a mover on that, please. Moved by Santina, seconded by Dan. Discussion? If not, anybody opposed? That carries unanimously. Let's go on to 12.4. Lisa, you're on again. Annual reporting of the CA permit review timeliness. Oh, no, what? That's
Thank you, Mr.
Jonathan,
Chair.
I'm sorry. Yes,
I'm actually going
Jonathan.
to turn this over to Scott and his team with manager Mike Stone.
Perfect, thank you. Scott, are you going to pick it up?
I'm just going to hand it right over to Mike Stone. He'll present this report for us.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thanks for having me this evening. It's been a few months since I've seen most of you, so happy to be back with a report for you here this evening. And the memorandum I have tonight for you is regarding review timelines for permits issued under HCA's regulation in 2021. By way of background, and as board members may recall, in April of 2019, Conservation Ontario Council endorsed the Conservation Ontario Client Service and Streamlining Initiative. This initiative is intended to help support the province's strategic objectives through improved client service and accountability among conservation authorities. As part of this initiative, CO worked in cooperation with its partner CAs to produce a document, Guideline for Client Service Standards for Conservation Authority Plan and Permit Review. This was endorsed by the CO Board of Directors in 2019, and included in this document are recommended service level targets for the review and issuance of CA permits under Section 28 of the Conservation Authorities Act. Related to the implementation of service level targets, CO had asked conservation authorities, specifically in the high growth areas, which includes Hamilton, to track their review times for the issuance of their permits and to report these annually to Conservation Ontario. The memo I have before the board this evening provides those review timelines for permits we issued in 2021, which are summarized in attachment A to this report. HCA has long been committed to providing excellent client service, and we've tracked our permit review timelines for many years, not just since Conservation Ontario has asked us to. Those review timelines were tracked against standards that were set by the province in 2010 under a document put out by the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry called the Policies and Procedures for Conservation Authority Plan Review and Permitting. This policy directs that CAs are to render an application decision for a permit within 90 days for a major application and within 30 days for a minor application. As part of a renewed commitment to efficiency and regulatory services through the Client Service and Streamlining Initiative, Conservation Ontario, in their 2019 document, recommended a second set of service level standards that CAs would strive to meet as a best practice. Those new standards provide for much shorter review and approval timeframes in comparison to the 2010 standards. And if you compare them, it's approximately a 50% reduction in the overall time for permit reviews to be taking place and permits to be issued. Under this framework, conservation authorities would make a decision within 28 days for a major permit in comparison to 90 under the 2010 standards, and within 21 days for minor applications in comparison to 30 days under the 2010 standards. Conservation Ontario has asked CAs to track those permit review times under both standards, and the annual reporting on timelines template that's included at the back of this report includes our review times under both standards for the January 1 to December 31, 2021 period. Also included in the back of your report is a table comparing the 2010 and the 2019 review time standards. So what did we do in 2021? So HCA, we issued 99 permits in 2021. 84% of those permits met the 2010 standards, and 51% of those permits met the newer 2019 best practice standards. These results are similar to what we found in 2020 when we issued 92 permits, 87% of which met the 2010 standards, and 59% met the 2019 standards. And for further comparison, in 2019, we issued 84 permits, 95% of those met 2010 standards, and 70% met the newer 2019 standards. So for 2021, permits that did not meet current standards, best practice, can in part be attributed to some of the following: complex applications that required more extensive consultation and staff review time, or applications where submissions received were incomplete or the quality of the supporting technical reports was poor. Ongoing restrictions as a result of COVID and working remotely also presented staff with some challenges at times in the review and processing of permits. And through 2021, again, as we had in 2020, we had somewhat of a reduced departmental staffing, which of course at times created challenges for us in meeting review times and accounts for some of the variances we're seeing in trying to meet the new 2019 standards. So in conclusion, I would just reiterate that staff will continue to track and report on our permit reviews in support of Conservation Ontario's Client Service Initiative. This ongoing tracking and reporting of permit review times will allow us to identify trends in service delivery and adapt as we can to ensure continued efficient client service. And we will continue to report these permit reviews to the board annually and also to Conservation Ontario. And with that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report for this evening, and I would be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Well, Mike, it has been a long time since I've seen you. I didn't recognize you, but thank you for your presentation to us. And it sounds like you haven't hit the target totally yet, but you're very, very close to it. So congratulations on that great work of your team and the whole team in Scott's area that are able to get close or hit these new thresholds. So any questions, Mike? This is always a big issue with the conservation authorities. They take way too long to get permits approved. Councillor Jackson.
Thanks, Chairman Ferguson. Manager Stone, thank you very much for the update. Maybe for public consumption, when the community and members of our public may hear the word permits being issued by the HCA. On page 2, you talk about 90 days for a major application, 30 days for a minor application. How about just elaborate for the community what a major application might look like and what a minor application might look like? Through you, Chairman Ferguson, please.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councillor Jackson. So in the HCA Board approved fee schedule, which we do every fall, there is direction in there which defines what constitutes a major and a minor permit. We have several categories, permits, and but to simplify things, I would say a major permit is something that involves the construction of new structures or buildings. A shore wall on Lake Ontario would be a further example. If there's major work being done in relation to municipal infrastructure and servicing, those would be major type permits. Your minor permits are things more like accessory structures, small decks, sheds, gazebos, those sorts of things.
Thank you, Manager Stone. That's good to know the distinction. Thanks, Chairman Ferguson.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I think I just need a motion to receive the information. Moved by Cynthia, seconded by Santina.
Mr. Chair, I think Cynthia actually had her hand up for a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Cynthia. Go ahead.
I did. Can everybody hear me?
Barely. Can you just speak up a bit? That would be good.
Okay. Through you, Mr. Chair, Mike, I was very interested to hear that HCA has actually been tracking its permit response time for years, long before this became a thing. And I think that's worth noting and emphasizing, because if you don't measure it, you can't meet it. And even though we don't meet the standard every single instance, and Mike has provided us with some good reasons why that may not be the case every time. I just want to note that I'm impressed that we were already doing this, and I think that's just a mark of diligence and conscientiousness. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia, for those comments. Just a little hint to everybody that the grid here is very small for me. So if you want to speak, please shake your hand wildly in front of your camera so I can see it. And thank you, Dan. There you go. Now I saw you. And thank you, Dan, for pointing that out to me. And I apologize to you, Cynthia, that I didn't see your hand. I thought you were moving the motion. But I think it has been duly moved and seconded. Is that correct, Jamie? We have a mover and a seconder to receive it?
If Cynthia is okay moving it, then Santina seconding? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, anybody opposed? I think I declare it approved. Let's move on now to Jonathan Baston with Water Resource Engineer, Watershed Conditions Report. Lots of snow, Jonathan.
Yeah, yes, indeed. Yeah, my back's a little sore from the shoveling earlier. Um, Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you all. So the watershed conditions report was dated January 24th, so not too long ago. That was provided to you with the package. Just wanted to give a quick update of conditions since then. We have received more snow. But right now, everything's fine. From a watercourse flooding perspective, no flooding concerns right now or in the next 2 weeks. That's because even though we're getting a lot of snow, there really isn't any warm weather coming. So I'm not expecting any major snow melt. I think the high is maybe 2 degrees, and that doesn't really cause much snow melt. So we should be fine from that perspective. Shoreline flooding, no major wave action or wave heights expected in the next 9 days. It's 9 days instead of 2 weeks because that's just what the wave forecasts do. They don't go out 2 weeks; they only go out 9 days. But that's good. So no concerns there. Drought monitoring. Actually, January was quite low for the amount of precipitation. So the 3-month precipitation, including January, was what we call level 1. But it was the first month that we've had level 1 in quite some time. Nothing to be concerned of. This happens, you get blips. So we'll just keep assessing it and we'll reassess conditions at the beginning of March and see where we're at. But I anticipate we'll be fine from that perspective. And lastly, but not leastly, the reservoir levels, they're all within normal ranges. Everything seems to be going fine with the reservoirs. So yeah, all in all, everything's fine from the watershed conditions perspective. Nothing really of concern at this time. That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions of Jonathan? So Jonathan, you're not concerned about the massive amount of snow, and if we have a rapid melt, will that be a problem, or are we okay?
It will be if we have a rapid melt, certainly, with the amount of snow we have and that we've been getting. What I'm hoping for that we see is some periods of 4 to 5 degrees a couple days in a row. That's helpful. We
Yeah,
just
it
get
is.
that little bit of melt. If we get it, we actually do forecast and track snow melt. So we have a little engineering spreadsheet tool that we're able to track the amount of water that's contained in the snowpack, and change it with days depending on the temperatures and the amount of snow and rain that we get, so that we're able to estimate. And then we ground truth that every 2 weeks with actual snow surveys so that we can say, hey, how much water is actually sitting there waiting? And if we have a big snow melt expected, like say a week from now, it was going to be a large snow melt, we'd go out and we'd resurvey it again in addition to those every 2 weeks, just to be safe on right before that snow melt was expected to occur. So we're able to kind of have a good feel of how much water is in that snowpack if you kind of converted a rainstorm into a snowpack, because that's really all it is. It's a rainstorm that's sitting there frozen, waiting to melt. So far so good. We'll keep tracking things. We've got lots of storage available in the reservoirs that if we do get a snow melt, we can use that. And that's why we keep the levels lower in the winter so that we have that available to us. So no concern at the moment. It would only be if we start to get a really high temperature day, where we haven't had any above 0 temperatures the days before, or if we get a major rainstorm on snow melt. Those are the ones to look out for. But there's nothing in the forecast, certainly in the next 2 weeks. So fingers crossed, and we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you. So I don't see anybody else wanting to ask questions. I'm scanning the grid. So just a motion to receive the report then. Moved by Esther, seconded by Maria. Anybody opposed? And that carries. And our final report is the Conservation Areas Experience Update. Gord, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening, Board of Directors. I'll start just by saying thank you for the approval of the reservation system at Spencer Gorge, recognizing that this was a lot of work and we've got a lot of work to do here. I'll put that one aside because I want to move us through just our conservation area experience, where we are in January. And January, typically a slower time in conservation areas. And here we are, this one a little slower than last year's, but still quite busy. There's families out there in search of the winter wonderland, and our conservation areas have got that covered for everybody. It's been beautiful out there, spectacular conditions. All of our major conservation areas, they just do not disappoint. And I mean Westfield Heritage Village, Valens Lake, Christie Lake, Dundas Valley, Confederation Beach Park. 50 Point Conservation Area. They're open sunrise to sunset, 7 days a week. And Mr. Chair, that's what helps those 12,000 plus membership pass holders and the day use visitors find their way around and exploring all of our watershed. And I can definitely tell you from early morning today, the staff were very busy at the helm at all of our conservation areas. First thing, they were promptly on the shovels and on the equipment, keeping our conservation areas safe and clear so we can operate year round. And I do have one shout out I want to throw tonight, and that's going to be to Valence Lake, because Valence Lake has really been they've been carrying our winter mail thus far, because it's a conservation area that's really a winter mecca. It's our conservation area that has the winter camping. It's got the ice fishing, very popular all of a sudden. It's got the ice skating, pond hockey, winter hiking, and we really, at Valence Lake, we really can rival almost any Ontario park, especially at this time of year. So to our staff out there, our area superintendent, Paul Karbasicki, these guys have been making us proud. So thank you to those guys. But outside of our major areas, and not to be outdone, we've got these smaller parquet conservation areas. And fun fact for you, there are 16 of these things. And yes, I do know the name of all of them, and I won't go there unless I have to. However, they have been very busy too, this winter busy, and especially all those parking lots that are associated with a waterfall feature. The people just love to get out there to see these frozen waterfalls, and they have been busy for those locations, and we're doing our best to make sure that we can keep those areas managed. So Mr. Chair, as I start to wrap up, one last little report here on one of our conservation areas, Devil's Punch Bowl. And at Devil's Punch Bowl, we've been undergoing some fencing improvements, and the area's been closed for a few weeks, and we're just on the cusp. We're on the cusp of getting this thing open. I'm pretty sure we're going to have it open for the weekend. We'll have to wait to see how the weather makes the crew work out there to finish off that fencing. And what I've seen so far, it looks great at Devil's Punch Bowl, a very, very popular Hamilton conservation area. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'm going to end my report on that note, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to report.
As always, thank you, Gord. And I bet the skiers are happy with all this snow and the snowshoers to get out and enjoy the winter.
Yes, thank you.
Is there any questions for Gord? Yes, Dan.
Gord, great report. Thank you. Always a pleasure to hear from you and what's happening. I have a question for you. If you and I had 2 or 3 hours tomorrow to go out for a hike, where are you taking me?
Well, that's a great question, Dan. And through the chair, man, our normal reaction is you'd think you'd want to go to these waterfalls, but I think we want to go do something a little more unique, and I want to go maybe a little less trodden area where everyone else is going. And I think I want to take you and go visit the new conservation trails up at Westfield Heritage Village Conservation Area. That 500-acre conservation area, it's still newly discovered, and it's even when the village is not operated in the static, self-guided operation. It's beautiful to walk around in there. No one walks away disappointed. You may have caught the CH Morning Live that was covering Westfield Heritage Village just last week. The place looks fantastic. We've got great staff there. We can't wait to get that thing up and going in 2022. That's where I would love to take you, Dan. You give me the call or the text, and we can get this hooked up.
Good answer, Gord, and good question, Dan. Now you got to be thinking about going up this weekend to Westfield Heritage Village and taking my daily walk up there. It'd be exciting to see. Any more questions for Gord? Seeing none, just a motion to receive then. Moved by Dan, seconded by Cynthia. Anybody opposed? That carries. So we're on to the last item of the agenda, which was something that was added at agenda approval, which is the new business, and it's a letter from the directors. And, let me just start that by saying, I'm sitting here so pleased that I was unanimously reelected or acclaimed as your chairman for 2022. And I again want to thank you for that great support and that great vote of confidence. I certainly do appreciate it. But does anybody have any comments on the letter they'd like to talk about? Or should we move to adjourn? Yes, Santina.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just to clarify with the letter that we received shortly before this meeting, speaking for myself, regarding the comment, collectively, we polled board members and they have indicated their desire to acclaim the current chair. I was not contacted. I was not polled. So this statement is not correct as it applies to me, and I'm disappointed. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Jim?
Yeah, I for two was not polled or contacted, and I wanted in the record that I was not polled or contacted to correct any possible misstatements of fact. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yes, Dan.
I'm also with Jim and Santina on that, and for the to be recorded in the record, I was not contacted for that poll either.
Interesting. Okay, any other comments on it? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Nope, we've got to go in camera, Lloyd.
My in camera says it's empty. Let me just turn my book back because I took the agenda out. Oh, you're right. Sorry.
We have two.
It's on a page I didn't pull out in the start of the meeting. Yeah, so I need a motion to go in camera then for a verbal report on the vaccination status and a confidential verbal update on a legal matter. So I need a motion to go into camera. Are you moving it, Cynthia? Oh, she disappeared. Anybody else like to move? We go in camera? Moved by Dan. Yeah, seconded by Santina. Anybody opposed? All in favor? Or no, opposed? That's carried unanimously. So Jamie, can you just let me know once you just
Okay.
Okay,
The live stream
so
is back.
we're back in live stream now, and I'd like to turn to the chair of the Budget Administration Committee to present Resolution 14.1. Santina.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So the Budget Administration Committee recommends to the Board of Directors that firstly, the HCA mandatory vaccination verification and testing policy be amended to require proof of being fully vaccinated in the workplace for all categories of staff, full-time, contract, casual, volunteers, and students. Secondly, that the definition of, quote, fully vaccinated for the purposes of this policy be defined as having received the full series of a COVID-19 vaccine, subject to change as defined by the Ontario Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care. Thirdly, that any current unvaccinated staff will have until April the 18th, 2022 to provide proof of full vaccination or an approved human rights or approved medical exemption, at which time any failure to do so will result in their termination of employment with the HCA. Fourth, that any employees with an approved human rights or medical exemption will continue to follow the previous testing measures. And finally, that the report remain in camera, but these recommendations have come out.
Was there a seconder to that motion? Seconded by Cynthia. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, is anybody opposed? That motion carries. And then there was also some verbal update on 14.2, and that information is going to remain confidential because it was legal advice. So I think we're finished with today's meeting. And at this time, I'd take a motion to adjourn. Moved by Santina, second by Dan. Anybody opposed? I don't think anybody oppose this. Okay, we're now adjourned. Thanks, everybody, for attending tonight. We got a lot done.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.